Let's kick things off. It is 1:03 Central Time on a frigid Tuesday here I'm in Kansas City today, but wanted to welcome everybody to the Soy Aquaculture Alliance webinar. Where our topic today is feeding fish soy, and we have a couple of experts to help us guide our conversation. But before we get started, just a quick introduction of myself, Easton Kaboshik. I serve as the Executive Director of Soy Aquaculture Alliance and have been since April. It has been a fun adventure so far. I'm getting my own knowledge up in the aquaculture sector, but we certainly have, I think Scott alone has more years of experience in aquaculture than I have years on this planet. So not to age you, Scott, but I think I appreciate the wealth of knowledge that we get to talk through today. So if there's anything that I can do or SAA can do to help, please always feel free to reach out. A couple of housekeeping things. All the attendees have been muted, so please submit questions using the chat function or the question submission function on the Zoom call. Really, if you can't tell, try to keep these informational and casual, right? We want to have a conversation and dialogue as best we can in this format. So please don't be bashful in asking questions and taking advantage of the expertise we have here. Please also note that we're recording this, so if you're not able to join or you want to follow up on our conversation afterwards, it will be available on our website, soyaquaculture.org. And yeah, other than that, I think we'll just go ahead and get things started. Oh, last thing, we do have to thank Michigan Soybean Committee. Michigan has been great, specifically Hannah Campbell over there helping us coordinate, Alan joining us today, and thanks to all the Michigan soybean farmers for making this webinar possible. All right, so again, to quickly introduce our two panelists, we have Dr. Scott Snyder, Nutrition Technology Manager at Ziegler Brothers. If you haven't heard of Ziegler, I don't know if you've heard of aquaculture, so I think that that name carries some credibility. And so thanks for being with us today, Scott. Scott is also, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, generously sharing his time and expertise with SAA and the United Soybean Board on a new aquaculture industry advisory team. So I'll speak more to that, but I'm gonna give you another title today, I guess, Scott. You're an official member of our team there. And then also joining us is Alan Moore, farmer, director of Michigan Soybean Committee, and then he's also director on our Soy Aquaculture Alliance. So Alan's joining us from sunny Florida, right? Okay, so our audience today is a combination of our usual stakeholders. So a mix of qualified state soybean boards, so all the soybean producing states that are participants of SAA or joining SAA hopefully in 2023. We have academia, we have aquaculture, really a diverse group of audience members as far as profession and organizations, but obviously we all have a shared interest, which is the whole point of soy aquaculture as an organization. So before we jump over to Scott, looks like we lost Alan there. So before we jump over to Scott, I wanted to just quickly recap for those of you who have not, had interaction with SAA in the past. I want to talk a little bit about who we are, and then for those of you who are familiar with SAA, just offer a few updates before we lose your attention, I guess. But just want to keep you engaged in all the things going on in our organization and help you take advantage of our resources. So for those of you new to SAA, really our purpose and our mission is to help expand domestic aquaculture. And by doing that, we help grow demand for U.S. soy. So our organization, Soy Aquaculture Alliance, obviously has a lot of shared interest in helping domestic aquaculture grow, because soy is such an important and essential ingredient in their feed formulations. We'll let Scott go into the details of that later, but just a little bit of background on how we work. We're a group. We're essentially soybean farmers, and we are a group of their soybean boards, their soybean checkups, and together we collaborate, share strategy, or define strategy, share funding, and organize projects to help that mission come to fruition. So these are the states that are supporting us, and we're hoping to grow and working on growing that in the coming year. And then this is the strategic priorities that it's actually the 2023 strategic priorities. That's a typo on my end. But the really just the high level program areas that SAA is focused on this year, and I'll breeze through these because they should be pretty straightforward. But obviously our core is on research, so finding the nutrition, the diets, the the general academic knowledge, enhancing the academic knowledge of aquaculture production. So finding ways to optimize how soy is consumed included in aquaculture diets. We also work heavily, with industry or the aquaculture industry, trying to understand build relationships with all the players in that industry and understand what is going on at their businesses and which challenges, for example, the certification of U.S. soy is one of the more recent issues that we've been working in, trying to work with the aquaculture industry to resolve. We also work with our soybean stakeholders, obviously. And then one of the newer projects that we're starting to explore is just a better and more standardized collection of the aquaculture market overall. So understanding total amount of feed production, how specific species are growing and trending in the industry, really to help under us, prioritize which research and which problems we solve first. And then also, of course, create education materials for that fifth point on our screen here today is all the advocacy and the other issues that are going on. So just trying to understand where we are as domestic aquaculture so that we can start to define a path forward and help that industry grow. A few updates, and this I think does a really good job of demonstrating the breadth of work that SA is covering as far as research. So a few of the active trials that we have right now are selective breeding trials for soybean meal tolerant trout. We have some work going on with California yellowtail out at the Hubs SeaWorld Research Institute. We're also looking at complementary ingredients, so combining insect meal to make soy more palatable for Atlantic salmon. We're working on optimizing soy diets, soy feed in Florida Pompano. And these are a few newer projects that we've just started to kick off that are jointly funded and led with USB. So just some of these other projects, just understanding consumer and aquaculture as social license. So understanding how consumers perceive aquaculture is a project that's kicking off here soon. Looking at a fully integrated system. Actually, I just sat down for breakfast with Jesse Chappell, who's leading this project last week on Friday. And if you want to be enthusiastic about aquaculture, you should sit down and have a conversation with Mr. Chappell. Certainly a visionary and working on a lot of exciting things and a lot of innovative things in this space. We also are working on largemouth bass and marine shrimp as well. So really a breadth of active projects and looking to continue to identify and expand those that research and help farmers fund that research and those solutions here moving forward. So a few other updates, all of that research that I just mentioned was commissioned through an RFP process. We are working on that, and Scott is actually generously, helping us define what those priorities are for 2023. So look for an RFP coming out early next month, and that'll be a kind of a tight turnaround. We're actually a little bit behind our timing last year, but just all of you academics out there and other institutions, please, don't be afraid to share your ideas for solutions and share your ideas for growing domestic aquaculture by responding to that RFP. That RFP is being developed by another group of experts. So we've formed a new aquaculture industry advisory team that is comprised of Scott, representative from Skretting, Riverence, and Rangan, so leading aquaculture organizations that are directly related to feed production. And that was intentional in that we just recognize they are the ones helping define and actually apply a lot of the knowledge that we use or that we generate through our research and through the RFPs. So we really want to make sure that the value chain is aligned with our research and our outcomes. So again, SAA is really pivoting toward using data and using real practicing nutritionists in setting its direction for how we invest checkoff dollars. Another, just update here, we're working closely with USEC, the United Soybean Export Council, regarding the certification of U.S. soy. So many of you are probably familiar with the best aquaculture practice and aquaculture stewardship council. I might have gotten that wrong. ASC. We have too many acronyms in our world. So working on the certification of US soy and in domestic aquaculture specifically. So I don't have a lot to share on that today, but if you're interested or this is a common issue, please don't be afraid to reach out and I will help as best I can and or connect you to the right resources. And then also just an invitation, I and our board will be at Aquaculture America in New Orleans, I believe, in February. So please don't be a stranger. We are better when we are connected, and I certainly learn from every conversation that I have. So open invitation to connect with us, connect with our farmer leaders in New Orleans. Otherwise, that's my brief update. I'm happy to answer any other specific questions that you can submit, but really wanted to just send a call to action. I am really curious, how we can start to coordinate all of the aquaculture and great things happening in aquaculture in a better way and share those success stories, connect common problems, connect good people with good people is the way I like to think about it. So if there's something going on, even if it's a quick email, a message on LinkedIn, something like that, please don't be a stranger. And I invite you to share simply, what's happening in aquaculture in your area of the country, your area of the world, and also what's happening in aquaculture in your organization. So for, think state soybean boards, please, if there's a new project that pops up, you're the ear on the ground, and SAA can help them and you and our organization share that story. So keep that, that feedback loop and don't be a stranger. I want to thank our panelists again, Alan and Scott. Thanks you for making time. I know this is, we're all busy, so having you here is a gift and I appreciate that. And then for all of you, growing aquaculture and growing fish and shrimp and everything, alligators, everything in between, thanks for considering US soy. We really do our best to connect the value and connect our farmers' good work with your farmers' good work. And if there's anything we can do to continue to increase that, please let us know. So with that, I'll leave this up for a moment, and we'll actually have this at the end as well. But if you scan that QR code, it'll connect you to my contact information, LinkedIn, and then also a link to schedule a meeting if you want to actually connect for 15, 20 minutes. We can get to know one another there. But otherwise, I think we should get to the meat of our conversation. So Scott, are you ready to go?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I will stop sharing here and pass the screen to you.
Right. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Again, Easton, thanks for the introduction and all the forward there. I think that clarifies everything for a lot of the folks attending. Again, my name's Scott Snyder. I'm the Nutritional Technology Manager for Ziegler Brothers Feeds. And today we're going to talk about feeding fish soy. US soy is a tremendous ingredient. And so, it's a real pleasure to be here. First, I'm going to give a little background about who Ziegler Brothers Feeds is and our history in the aquaculture industry. And then we'll get into how we evaluate soy and soy products for use in our products. So Ziegler Brothers was founded in 1935 by brothers Ty and Leroy Ziegler as a local producer of poultry and livestock feeds. In 1967, Dr. Tom Ziegler, who many of you know, assumed leadership of the company and changed the strategic direction away from farm animal feeds and towards the research and development of specialty animal feeds and aquatic feeds in particular. We made our first rainbow trout diets in 1955. And between then and today, aquaculture accounts for about 80% of what we produce. Today, Ziegler is embarking upon its third generation of family leadership, and the company continues to develop new and innovative technologies for specialty markets. With just under 100 employees globally, we export hatchery products to approximately 50 countries around the world. And we're also responsible for about 80,000 metric tons of aquafeed production in 5 different countries: Latin America, Egypt, India, and Ecuador. So, small company. As many of you are aware, aquaculture in the U.S., it's a very hostile environment. We have very little aquaculture growth. And so as a company, in order to maintain relevance, we are very technical, we are very mobile, and we live by our slogan, which is nutrition through innovation. We operate in 5 basic areas: shrimp aquaculture, finfish aquaculture, pet and zoo nutrition, where we manufacture diets for aquatic, amphibian, and reptile animals in zoos. Our lab program, which falls under our health and research, where we produce diets for rodent programs, and then our feed mill technology program. So that's a technology transfer program that allows us to co-brand our products in any country around the world that is strong in aquaculture. Our goal as a company is to serve as a beacon of nutritional innovation and to bring value to the lives of our customers, our employees, and our communities. We're not simply doing this to be a feed producer. We are trying to advance feed technology and to create a more sustainable, long-lasting industry for both the U.S. and in any country where we operate. So just briefly, what the company profile looks like. Again, Tom Ziegler took us on a new trajectory back in the 60s. Matt and Tim have taken over leadership of the company as of 2013, and their goal is to maintain that velocity in that area. So in 2014, Craig Browdy was brought on as the new research and development director. And underneath his umbrella, we've got 2 research areas. We've got what we call ZBI R&D, which is based in our manufacturing facility in Pennsylvania, where we look at manufacturing process, engineering, feed manufacturing platforms, and new product development. And then based out of our facility, we have a live animal testing facility that we call ZARC, or Ziegler Aquaculture Research Center, in Fort Pierce, Florida, where we have live animal testing procedures in place, so we can benchmark diets, we can test new products, we can do disease challenge work for health additives. So it really has expanded our technical expertise. We've done a lot of branding work lately to rebrand the company with a new website. We've expanded our nutrition department, hired a nutritionist, Krista Rice, here in the last few years. I came back to the company in 2018. And so as we sit, we're led by, from the R&D and technical standpoint, with a small company, we've got 4 PhD scientists on staff, a staff of 10 research technicians, and 2 in-house R&D facilities to help push our products forward and be a tip of the spear type of company. So we'll segue that into how we look at aquafeed ingredients in general. So what are some of the characteristics that we look for as a manufacturer of not just a handful of products, but over 800 over 300 products that we manufacture? Consistent nutritional profile is absolutely paramount here. We look for a lack of anti-nutritional factors or adventitious toxins, but that consistency is really what we look for. Reliable behavior through manufacturing processes. How do hammer mill environment affect the ingredient? How does heat and moisture affect the ingredient? How does it behave through either a pellet mill or an extrusion processing manufacturing line? Predictability and relatively stable price of the ingredient. Again, that goes back to the consistency. As a feed manufacturer, it is our job to produce the products that we make very consistently. Whether a customer purchases that in May or in June or in 2022 or in 2024, it's got to be consistently the same product. And we do that by having consistent ingredients. Is that ingredient available for purchase where we operate? That is really key. It doesn't matter how good an ingredient is. If we have to bring it from a very long distance, that's added cost and really undercuts the value of the ingredient for us. Is it readily accepted by the feed purchaser? What is the public perception of that ingredient? Is it viewed positively in a sustainability format? Is it viewed positively in terms of how the animal can accept it? Does it nourish the culture species in an acceptable manner? Does it elicit a strong feeding response when incorporated into the feed? Is it palatable to the animal? And does the animal meet the expected growth rate of the farmer? So if we talk about soy, how does it grade out, across these characteristics? Does it have a consistent nutritional profile and a lack of detrimental characteristics? Well, absolutely. Soy is absolutely one of the keystone protein ingredients, not only in feed for productive farm animals, but also for aquaculture. It's probably, in terms of our volume of ingredients used, it's our number 2 volume ingredient that we use for the production of our products. What are some of the caveats to this, though? If you look at soybean, there's kind of a juxtaposition between aquafeed need and soybean producer. And that is, there is a demonstrated reduction in protein level of the soybean over time. Part of that is from selective breeding, where the bean is bred for yield in terms of bushel per acre. And that, results in a reduction in nutrient density of the crop. And then, however, there's also an increased use of value-added soy products because of this. We're after high protein, low anti-nutritional factors, and this further processing gives that to us as a feed manufacturer. And then as I mentioned, the anti-nutritional factors that are found in soy. Number one, further processing certainly reduces or removes most of these. The phytic acid phosphorus has low availability for aquatic animals, and not only requires us to supplement excess phosphorus to the diet, but it also results in excess phosphorus in the wastewater of the farm. So that's an area that really needs to be addressed or considered when formulating with soy. What's going on today and will continue into the future is there are aqua-friendly soy strains. However, current state of that is a bit lack of availability and current high costs limit the application of these in most manufacturers today. Is soy reliable through our manufacturing processes? Yeah, absolutely. Soy, especially solvent extracted soybean meal, is a reliable ingredient in terms of process behavior. The heat of processing can further reduce the level of specific anti-nutritional factors that soy brings. And from a formulation standpoint, nutritional and physical consistency is one of soy's best characteristics. Very seldom does an employee at the mill complain about having to work with soybean meal. It doesn't have a foul odor. It isn't hard to manipulate in the mill, and it consistently puts out a product, through process that doesn't result in process changes on the fly. And so if you're a mill employee, you like soybean meal. Predictable and relatively stable price is a characteristic. This is some very old data, but it really demonstrates that soybean meal, especially relative to something like fish meal, often experiences very long periods of time with very stable pricing. That is so key to operating a or operating a feed mill and operating a farm, to have that long-term reliability in pricing. Granted, you can't, the last 2 to 3 years where everything has gone crazy, that's really an anomaly. But if you look at, you can pull data back to the last 45 years of soy, and soy, while sure the trading ranges for soybean prices do change at certain points in time. Once you're in a trading range, it stays very stable for sometimes up to 20 years. And so that's a really strong attribute for soy in any feed manufacturer. Soy's availability for purchase. This is just a graphical representation of the poultry industry here in the U.S., which is highly dependent upon soy. And as you can see, there's not a state in this country that doesn't have some form of poultry going on in it. And they all use soybean meal in the production of poultry feeds, which, because we have such a strong poultry industry here and such a strong relationship between poultry and soy, we can overlay that onto aqua very easily. You can put an aqua feed mill anywhere in the US and have good access to soybean. So while, as an industry, the aqua feed industry is much, much smaller than our other land animal feed industries, we can rely on that existing infrastructure to have that consistent supply available to us. Now, is it readily accepted by the feed purchaser? Now, this is where things get a little bit more complicated. With land animal feeds, we don't raise this huge range of species that we currently set at with aqua. So on a global scale, aqua feed contains about 34% soybean, just to talk in general averages. But on a global scale, we're raising many more omnivorous species of fish and crustaceans that can utilize high levels of plant proteins in the diet. If you look at broilers, here on global scale, they're about 25% soy. And then swine, which really has similar trends to aquafeed production, it's down to about 15% soy. Whereas traditionally, if you go back 20 years, swine diets had 25 to 30% soy in them. But because of the competitive nature of ingredients, commodity ingredients produced in the US, soy has been forced out a little bit. So today here in the US, we're looking at about 15% soy composition of the diet for an overall average. And that depends primarily on the species fed and then the cost of soy relative to competing protein ingredients. So whereas catfish and tilapia that are much more omnivorous to herbivorous, much higher levels of soy are possible. Catfish obviously being the juggernaut species here in the US. You take a step off to the number 2 species, which is rainbow trout, carnivorous species of animal, and they're using far less simply due to intolerance and customer perception of soy in the diet. So on the announcement to this webinar, a couple of questions were posed, and the first one was, how do aqua feed nutritionists determine dietary soy inclusion? Well, this goes into the species and the difference in physiology that these different species exhibit. So again, number one, not to overlook the obvious, but how does it nourish the culture species that we're making the feed for? We know more about soy than we probably do any other ingredient that's available to us in terms of nutritional profile, digestibility, processed through manufacturing, all these important things, anti-nutritional factors. We know all these things about soy. So that, we're going to kind of gloss over that and say, beyond that, what are we looking at? And so it's, does it elicit a strong feeding response? Is it palatable to the animal? And does it meet the expected growth rate? And to be able to answer those questions, we've got to really have a good understanding of the physiology of the animal. So this little cartoon here on the right-hand side of the slide, is lifted from several publications actually. I think most recently the NRC from 2011, and the digestive system at the top labeled A there, where we've got a large stomach, a short intestine, pyloric cepi. That's a true carnivore's digestive system. Don't have a lot of room there to take in those very complex plant proteins that are higher in fiber, higher in carbohydrate, require a much longer digestive tract to get good absorption. And as you go from A to B to C to D, you go down in what we'd call trophic level of the species being cultured, from a carnivore to a pure filter feeding herbivore there in D. And so having a clear understanding of the species, where it fits into this spectrum, really goes a long ways to telling us how much soy the animal will tolerate. And then once you've got that, then it's about relative cost. So what are the competing ingredients that are available, and what is the farmer's objectives, ultimately beyond that? And so that takes us into the next question that was posed here. When is soy the right answer, and when is it not? Again, these are really complex issues. They can be anyway. And so as a feed producer, it boils down to, having a responsibility to the customer and giving them the products that they want, having a responsibility to the animal that's in the culture system. Are we going to nourish it properly? Are we going to make sure we produce a diet that doesn't cause any harm to the digestive system in terms of an enteritis? And then understanding also the limitations of the culture system. What's the digestibility and the waste characteristics of a diet that is made with this particular portfolio of ingredients that we put together here. And so just to kind of give a little bit of the range of the spectrum here, if you take the large trout farms here in the Western US, they have really high volumes of water to work with. And so, it's very common to have 5 cubic feet per second of water running through a trout raceway and get 4 or 5 uses out of that water. So you've got a large volume of water to dilute a larger volume of waste. Whereas if you farms in the Eastern US, where they have very small water springs, they have much more land to work with. So they will use oxygen systems, get sometimes up to 20 uses of that water before it is returned back to its to the stream that it came from. And so these guys have a much lower tolerance for non-digestible nutrients because they've got to use that water so many times. So all that goes into play into when soy is and when it isn't the correct answer. So overall, it's about customer objectives, animal performance, the sustainability question, what's the customer's current definition of sustainability, and are they operating under any specific certification schemes where soy is either attractable or not attractable to them as an ingredient in the formulas. So just to wrap this up, I think, there was one other question asked, is soy a solid fish meal replacer? And I just kind of skated right over that one. As Easton mentioned, I've been involved in the aquaculture industry for a long time. And I think really it's time to move beyond this term of fish meal replacement. We know so much more today about the nutritional needs of the animals that we're feeding and the nutritional quality of the ingredients that are available to us. And things have become much more commoditized in the last 20 years. So we're really formulating to give the best possible dietary solution in terms of percentage of ingredients that give us a specific nutritional profile for a feed. And we've really moved beyond our old way of formulating, which was if we had gaps in our knowledge base, we could just put a little extra fish meal in the diet and knew everything would be okay. So after 20 years, I think now it's time to move beyond soy as a fish meal replacement and say, what can we do with soy as an aquafeed ingredient? What should we do with soy as an aquafeed ingredient? And how do we expand that to maintain the sustainability and take advantage of this ingredient that's grown right here at home for us? So yeah, soy is a great aquafeed ingredient for many of the reasons we've discussed. Customer needs and relative cost determine our soy inclusion from a formulator standpoint. And I think last but not least, we've got to ask ourselves, can soy efforts help grow U.S. aquaculture production? Because when it really comes down to it, if we want to have more soy used in domestic aquafeed production, we've got to have a bigger aquafeed or bigger U.S. aquaculture industry. So with that, I'll say thank you and open the floor for discussion, I reckon. Thank you, Easton.
Thank you, Scott. So that's exactly right. I hope the audience enjoyed that, and please do submit some questions. But I have a few of notes of just some thoughts that I had. You mentioned Scott, that you're in a number of different countries, exporting in 50 different countries. I'm just curious, what it's obvious that that's where the market is for Ziegler Brothers. I'm just curious what some of those countries are doing that perhaps the United States isn't or can't or would, should be doing to grow. Are there any obvious techniques or things that they're doing or
Oh,
not?
well, I mean that's a man, that's a wide ranging question there, Easton.
Well, we got all afternoon. We'll just hang
To
on for like 6 hours.
Yeah, in the short answer, our regulatory framework really is hampering what we do from an aquaculture standpoint. Uh, there's only so much we can do in the existing regulatory framework. If you look at, for the most part, aquaculture, and this is both good and bad, it really has a lot of growth in second and third world countries. And it's done through sheer volume, right? Sheer volumes of land with sheer volumes of ponds, low intensity type of production system, and that's not something that the U.S. can continue with. All right, I mean the U.S. catfish industry is the closest thing to that. It's certainly moved way beyond what you would see in a pond production system in Mexico or Egypt or Thailand for certain species. You mentioned Jesse Chappell and the work they're doing on intensification of culture systems. That's something that's got to continue. We've got to kind of come together more as an industry. And if I like to use the poultry industry as an example of something that the U.S. can do in terms of land animal ag production that competes globally. We're not as big as China is in poultry, but we're really close. I mean, we take that type of an approach where we pare down and run a manageable number of species. And we've got to have appropriate species for both culture system and our markets. All right. The U.S. we're known for not wanting to spend a lot of money on buying seafood. So we've got to have a species that we can produce economically, that is nourishing to the people that buy it, has good palatability, can be raised in a lot of different areas. So we're going to have to pare down and stop trying to grow so many lions and tigers and bears and grow something that's more amenable to being a prey animal and sit at the center of our plate.
It's good feedback.
That's a controversial answer.
I know it's a controversial, and so I knew it wouldn't be an easy question, but definitely got us started. So thank you for responding there. So we have
we put a lot of emphasis on some of these really high value species, right? I mean, right. Atlantic salmon is a great example of what you can do. Mm-hmm. Right? It's nutritionally, it's kind of the exception to a lot of the rules. It can use a cheaper fat source than a lot of other salmonids can. It's tolerant to soy to a high degree. It's not the most expensive seafood in the shelf. So, there's a lot of positives there. Same thing with hybrid striped bass. That's a great all-purpose species that can be raised in a lot of areas. Rainbow trout fits that as well, especially with the selective breeding programs that have really developed these lines of fish that are much more tolerant to a more affordable, more economical diet. So we've got a lot of great things going. We just got to, get some traction behind it and see if we can't, really commercialize it here.
We have a couple of questions on other soy ingredients or specialty ingredients, soy protein concentrate, fermented soy. So what's the level of acceptance of advanced soy protein ingredients? Is that a question you can field?
Yeah, they certainly are more accepted. Again, it's the fish farmer is certainly the person that's got to accept these things, right? I think that's what the question here is. It can, again, it's going to depend on the farmer and the species and the system, but with tilapia, for example, or catfish, you can probably go 50% of the protein. With a rainbow trout, with farmers that are more family farm type areas, it's less so. So, you're looking at, probably 10%, 10 to 15% of the protein for carnivorous species as far as the current temperature of the U.S. farmer.
Great. Next question from Ken Overturf. So in different types of fish, where do you see the levels of soy inclusion in feeds in carnivorous, omnivorous, herbivorous, and shrimp species? What can you give it looks like a high level percentage.
Yeah. So good to see you, Ken.
Maybe it's harassment here. I can stop feeding Ken's questions.
No, that's fine. Ken's a great colleague. Happy to see you here. No, so again, so for carnivorous species, like I said, we talked about trout and salmon a little bit. What they can tolerate versus what the systems will take are there's a range there. So let's say from a low of 0 to 5% on the low end as far as acceptability and the genetics, all the way up to probably 15%. Based on what's commercially out there. We've certainly done higher than that. Ken's group especially, they've taken that to the limit with their work, and so I think they're up to 25% is very doable with some of their new strains. So on an omnivorous, we'll use catfish as an example of omnivore. You're sitting at 20% today for the most part, and then an herbivorous. So let's go into tilapia as an herbivore. It's very common to see a 50%. Even if it's just soybean as a single plant protein ingredient in the diet, you see 50% soybean diets in tilapia, all the time today. Then with shrimp, my shrimp knowledge is a little limited. I'm a fin fish guy, but we do a lot of shrimp diets, both Vaname and Monodon, and it's between 15 and 20%. So
excellent.
And a lot of that depends on what's around it. Do you have a good source of supplemental amino acids to bring that nutritional profile up where you need it? Is your fish meal that's available in country a high quality, or your other protein ingredients? What's the quality of them? You've got to consider that whole picture. When you're looking at that.
Excellent. Let's do one more. We had a question come in. First of all, thank you for everyone. All the questions flooded in as soon as we asked that. So I think we're trying to stick to an hour here and won't be able to get to all of them, but we had one last question regarding soy protein concentrate. So it sounds like it's starting to match or matches the quality of fish meal. Is Ziegler, paying attention to SPC, or how is that related and growing in aquaculture?
Absolutely. Because we're a specialty feed company, so we've got close to 1,000 different ingredients in our warehouse. And so we certainly have soy protein concentrate, soy protein isolate, fermented soy, and they all have a role, in a modern formulation. When we say it matches the quality of fish meal in terms of tangible, measurable nutritional characteristics, absolutely. But there are things still about fish meal that we don't quite understand, and we've not yet identified those X factor ingredients that fish meal brings. We know, for example, we do not have to have any fish meal at all in the diets of a lot of species of aquacultured animals. Tilapia and some of the carps are great examples of that. But with the best non-fish meal diet, you can add 1 to 2% fish meal to that diet and get a boost in performance. So there are still things that we don't have the answer for, but these value-added soy products are really making tremendous strides. The concentrates, especially the modern concentrates that are produced through fermentation technology, they tend to bring a few extra goodies to the party, be it organic acids and some essential oil type compounds that come with them. So yeah, they're really making great strides in those areas.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Alan, any questions for Scott? Any farmer perspective questions?
Not right at the moment.
At the moment. Well, you ready? We can shift from Scott for a moment and go to you, Alan. So, Alan, once you go ahead, you'll do a better job introducing yourself than I will. So, would you introduce yourself to our attendees, and we'll just have a quick discussion on the farmer perspective of soy and aquaculture.
Okay, so Alan Moore. I live in central Michigan, north of Lansing, about 30 miles. We're on a farm that's been there since 1837, so I'm sixth generation farmer. Our facility produces seed. There's corn, soybeans, and small grains, all for seed, and have been doing that. We're about 2,500 acres.
Excellent. And you currently serve as a director at Michigan, correct?
I'm not on the Michigan board right now, but I serve as Michigan's representative to this SAA, the Soy Aquaculture Alliance.
Got it. Okay, that's my mistake then. So, yep, you are a director on SAA. I do know that. You're my
Right,
boss.
right.
Right. Excellent. And how long have you served on? But you were previously a director at Michigan, correct?
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
Could you talk about all of your leadership roles in the soybean industry?
Yeah, I started out on the Michigan board in the early 80s. I'm not sure exactly what year. Served there my 6-year term that I was allowed, and then went to the NCSRP and served there for 8 years. Then I served on the United Soybean Board for 9 years, and served on the biodiesel for a couple of years, and now I'm on the SAA. So I've been around the soybean industry for quite a while.
Yep, you've been on almost every one of them. It's great experience. So I think, personally think there's a lot of parallels between the NCSRP, which is the North Central Soybean Research Partnership. I think I got that acronym right. So can you talk about your experience on NCSRP a little bit and how it kind of mirrors SAA as an organization?
Yeah, the North Central Soybean Research is a group of states that all have common problems and put their resources together to try to solve them as a group. And it's been highly successful. We've been able to make progress on multiple. It focuses pretty much on production issues.
Right.
But the SAA is similar in the way that it's a group of states that want to promote soy aquaculture, and together we can do better than individually.
It's a great perspective. And we've done that in biodiesel, right? Because you served on NBB, correct?
Right, I did. Yeah.
Yep. So is aquaculture similar to biodiesel?
In some ways, I felt when I first came on the board in the 80s, biodiesel was a pie in the sky type idea that we were putting money into, and a lot of people question, why are you putting money into that? But you can see the importance of it to the soy industry now. And I feel that aquaculture is in the same position right now. It has tremendous, possibilities, and we need to work on it, put money into it,
Right.
and solve the problems. And I think it has tremendous potential.
I agree. I think Scott agrees too. Let's talk about that potential a little bit. So what is it from, your experience on the board, what is that opportunity for farmers specifically if we accomplish this mission of growing a domestic aquaculture market?
Market for our meal, it's local and consistent. Export is great, but you can tell from the last few years what can happen to exports in a real short order, exports and imports both.
Mhm.
having domestic markets for the meal is, and the oil is important, but biodiesel is taking a lot of the oil, but it
Yeah.
still need all the meal to be used.
Absolutely. Well, and I think we've seen even more recently some of the challenges even in our we're not invincible even when it comes to transportation, right? So if we can't get our soybeans out because of some of the challenges on the Mississippi River, for example, if we don't have a home here, it's just basically creating options, creating diversity and where our soybeans can go, and also of course keeping a food security here domestically as well, right?
Yeah.
Feeding fish here, eating fish here with our own
Yeah.
sustainable ingredients.
Yeah, I think that's important because you can see how over the last couple of years how fragile international trade is. It doesn't take much to interrupt the whole thing. Any little thing that happens in the world, and it can go in a mess in a hurry.
Right. I don't, yeah, any little thing, any big, you know, big invasion or, political issue. So it's
Right.
it's nice to have some control over that as much as we can. So I guess what would you recommend to your fellow farmers about caring about aquaculture? It just seems adverse, right? It seems like we're farmers over here and now we're talking about growing fish. So why should your fellow farmers care about aquaculture?
I think for some of the reasons we just talked about, and the fact that everybody thinks about where the large volumes go, but I think you got to look to the future where the large volumes might be, because there's
Right.
trends where more seafood is being consumed all the time and less poultry and less beef. So I think we need to be aware of those things and think forward on them issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We spoke the other day a little bit about, what farmers can do. Do you have any other, recommendations? Like, first of all, care, obviously, that and take an interest in why this aquaculture market could and will be important and of growing importance in the future. Is there anything else that they can do to get involved or help support this growth?
Probably the one really big priority is regulation that Scott mentioned. It's a hostile environment here, and through SAA, we should put a lot of effort into educating people in the regulatory framework to try to understand aquaculture and how it can be done safely without hurting the environment at all, and produce high quality feed that we control, or high quality fish within the US instead of importing. I mean, we have regulations for imports, but you don't have control over how them were raised in other countries. So I
Right.
think that's important for all people, but soybean farmers particularly.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess that to put that into practice, right, where SAA is primarily a checkoff funded organization. So I would encourage you all to, be involved with your directors and contribute to the non-checkoff budgets of your QSSBs. And just understand, among all of the regulatory issues, aquaculture experiences the same, but it's I would argue a largely bipartisan challenge, right? Something that we can actually move the needle on, and if we can move some of those regulatory barriers, that's obviously a key to our domestic growth and demand for soy as well. So, great. Any other closing comments, Alan, before we kind of wrap things up here?
I guess I would just encourage all states to make sure their priorities are in order. Put more priority on aquaculture as a future, and not concentrate on what you're just see the biggest chunk of the market at. So to put priority on that in their budgets for US and international aquaculture both.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you. And thank you, Scott. Scott, any other last thoughts or questions for Alan, I guess, as your partner in this endeavor?
This is tremendous opportunity to help get the word out there. Alan, really appreciate, your participation in this and the insights that you've got. Soy's got, if you look at, this compared to other things, other industries, other trends, like it's almost like comparing fossil fuels to electric vehicles. All right. And so, we don't want to go down that road. We want to keep these current existing infrastructure strong, and we want to grow things that are going to be around for a long time. So,
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Keep
I
growing
think
soy here, and we need to keep growing fish here.
couldn't have ended it on a better note. So thank you so much, Scott and Alan, and to all of you who took time out of your day to join us, thank you as well. As you can see on the screen, I have a QR code you can scan and we can get in touch. I was also, reminded too, if you have other ideas or topics that you're interested in, or overall just feedback on the format of these webinars, the value of these webinars, please don't be, again, a stranger. I'd love to hear ideas for future topics, or if you think that this is not as worth your time, that's also valuable to us, right? Because we're all busy, but we want to keep talking about soy and aquaculture and our mutual interests. And we just appreciate all of you and what you do to help that happen in your individual, day to day, whether you're a farmer, staff member at a QSSB, or an aquaculture farmer directly. So thanks everyone for joining us. I hope that you get in touch and have a wonderful week. Take care, Scott. See you, Alan.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.